I just want to do a small recap because subject is like that. This will help us to maintain that continuity with the uh, coming verses. So, Krishna started his Bhagavad Gita or teaching from chapter verse number 11 in chapter number 2. In verse number 11, as I told you, the beginning itself was a sixer. He told Arjuna, you are grieving for something which doesn't deserve to be grieved at all. Wise men like you will never grieve for the living as well as the dead ones. So what Krishna is trying to say is that grief is nothing actually there. Death is comparing here because that's one thing for us, the ultimate reason for grief. But what Krishna is trying to say is that wise man understands that death is something like a natural process, and wise men also understand it is not the death that is responsible for my grief. It is putting myself with that person, emotional bonding, the connection that I have with that person, how much I am involved into that is responsible for our grief. So wise man, he doesn't get attached to anything, and so he will never grieve. And Arjuna, wise man like you. Why he says Arjuna as a wise man? Because in chapter number 1 and up till the earlier part of chapter number 2, Arjuna was talking like a wise man as if he knows everything. So Krishna makes a sarcastic statement here. Arjuna, a wise man like you, because you are talking like a wise man, will never grieve. So Arjuna, are you a wise man? Whatever you talk till now makes any sense? So that's what Krishna starts with. So he starts in verse number 12 saying, Atma is Nityaha. That is, it is always present. It is always present means what? Whenever we use the word always, we are referring to 3 time period, that is the past, present and the future. Atma is in all this time period, so it is called Nityaha. And in verse number 13, Krishna says Atma is Nirvikaraha. Nirvikaraha means that which never undergoes any modifications, changes. He tells Arjuna, it is only the body that undergoes the changes, like childhood, boyhood or girlhood, adult and the old age. But Atma doesn't undergo any such changes. In verse number 14 and 15, Lord Krishna switches over back to Anatma. Why? Because in case Arjuna says, I am worried about killing the bodies or destroying the bodies of Bhishmacharya, Dronacharya, Duryodhanadis and others, he wants to proactively handle that also. So here he says, Arjuna, these 5 sense organs are always in constant connect with the sense objects, which are the external factors. Because of this constant connect, we sometimes feel sorrow, sometimes feel happy. And Arjuna, please understand, this sorrow and happiness has a tendency to arrive and depart, which means they don't stay, they are not permanent. Sometimes you feel sorrow, sometimes you feel joy. And so what he says, the people who understand this truth never worry at any time. They don't have any worries at all, because all that comes and goes, that's how the nature is. Nothing is stable. So after establishing this factor in verses number 14 and 15, Krishna switches back to Atma from verse number 16. In verse number 16, which we saw in the last class, he is giving a very, very important knowledge to us. And it's beautifully said also. What he says, non-existence has no existence and existence has no non-existence. So we try to understand existence. Existence means whenever we say that is existing, it is there in all the 3 time periods, past, present and the future. Anything that is not there in these time periods are called non-existence. So Krishna wants to establish the fact that Atma is Satyaha. So when we say Satya, then there is something called Asat. And in between, something we understood in the last class is Mithya. M-I-T-H-Y-A, mithya. In our knowledge, all that is in our experiences, we term that as satya, and that which is not in our experience, we term that as asat. But Lord Krishna says, should not be taken into account. Should not be considered to understand sat and asat. So Krishna says sat means that which is present in all the three time periods, past, present and future. Asat means that is not present in any of these three periods, which means it is not at all there. But we are experiencing something which needs a terminology. That terminology is mithya. Mithya means that which is available for our experience at the present situation, but when you analyze, you will understand it was not there and it is not going to be there. So the classic example that is given in Vedanta, which we saw, which we didn't see in the last class, we will see here, is clay and pot. Clay exists in all the time period. Even before the pot was formed, clay was there. Even after the pot is destroyed, the clay is there. Even when the pot is there, the clay is there in the form of pot. So the clay is there in all the time period. So clay is sat. I mean, this is only for understanding. So don't take that clay as sat. Okay, just for our understanding of sat and mithya. But whereas the pot is there only in the present when you are experiencing it. Pot was not there before it was formed or it was made, and pot will not be there when it gets destroyed. So pot is not dependable. Mithya is non-dependable. Sat is always dependable. So we saw this with an example of a snake and a rope. Snake was not there before. Snake will not be there after you understand, but snake is there only at that present situation when you are ignorant of the truth. But the rope was there even before you saw the snake in that. And the rope is there. It is only for you it looks like snake, but actually the rope is there even when the snake is there for you, and the rope will be there after the snake is removed. This is called a superimposition. Something is imposed over something which is already there. The rope, over the rope, superimposed is the snake. So that is called mithya. That is what we have to consider here as asat. In our life, the asat is nothing but mithya, which is available for our experience and for a time period, and then it goes off. If we take our sorrows, it was there available for our experience when certain things happened, and after some time it goes off. Life gets into the normal course. Similarly, happiness also, when certain incidents happen, happiness is there, and after some time it is out of your mind. You are into a normal course of your life. So they are all not true. They are all mithya, available for your experience at a particular time, or which we call it as when you are experiencing, it is available for experience, but when you analyze and understand, it is not there. That's called mithya. So we also try to understand one more factor through a simple example of a cardboard chair. The cardboard chair is nice, decorative, but it cannot be used for sitting. If you sit on the cardboard chair, what happens? I'm sure nobody would like to experience that or experiment that for that factor. But you can enjoy the beauty of the cardboard chair. That's it. It's only there to enjoy the beauty of the beauty, but it is not available for use. You can't depend on that. So mithya is also something like that. The five sense organs, whichever is experiencing the sense objects, you experience it. You are going to experience it. But while you experience, be conscious, they are mithya, only for a time period. So let me not hold on to this experience and then struggle to get out of it. And let us be conscious. There's only one thing that is Sat, that is Atma. Atma was there even this body was formed. Atma will be there when the body is alive, and Atma is also continue to be there when the body is dead or perished. So he says, Arjuna, Atma is always there. Even before Bhishmacharya came, even before Dronacharya came, Atma is there. Atma is there. Atma was there. Atma is there in the form of this, not in the form, it is there with them. When they die, the body will perish, but the Atma will remain. So Atma is Sat, and rest of the things are Asat. The Prakriti is Asat. But we are experiencing it. We will experience it, not to get away from the experience, but let's be conscious they are not dependable. That's the point that we need to understand here. So with that understanding, now we'll move on to verse number 17, where Lord Krishna is going to establish that Atma is Sarvagataha. Sarvagataha means it is all pervading. Atma is all pervading. So because it is all pervading, what Krishna says, Arjuna, be known that which is pervading everywhere is not destructible, and it cannot be destroyed also. So that which is pervading everywhere it is not destructible, and you can't destruct also. So Atma is Sarvagataka. So when we say it's all pervading, which means it's present everywhere. It's present everywhere. First we saw Nitya. It is present always, time period. It is present everywhere, Sarvagataga. So that is space related. So only when you have boundaries, you can destroy that. Anything that which does not have the boundary, where will the destruction happen? It is not destructible and it cannot be destroyed. Why? Because it is all pervading. It is there everywhere. Because for everything, space is boundary. Space, something which has no boundary. We are in a space. For example, let us take the hall. In a home, we'll take in a house. We'll just take a portion of the house. Hall. The hall is occupying the space. Okay? The hall is occupying the space. Also, we need to understand that hall is in the space. Hall is occupying space, and also the hall is in the space. When you destroy the hall, the space is not going to get modified. The space is always there. Why? The space is within the four boundaries of the hall, and it is also outside the four boundaries of the hall. So the space doesn't undergo any modification. The hall may undergo modification, but the space will never undergo any modification. The space is always there. So when you compare this hall to the body and the space to Atma, we will understand this very simply. The body undergoes modifications. We will see the 6 modifications later. The body undergoes modification. But Atma doesn't undergo modification. Space is limitless. Space is limitless. We have never measured the space of this universe. We don't have any measurement. We are trying to reach one point to another point. But that doesn't mean the space is complete within that point. So it's a limitless. So Atma is limitless. It's all pervading. So it has no form. It cannot be destroyed. That which is limitless do not have form also. Is it not? Very simple. When there is no form, it is not subject to any destruction. It cannot be modified, because as I told you, even in destruction, some modification happens. So now he says that since Atma is all pervading, like space, has no limit, no boundaries, which means it has no form. When it has no form, it cannot be destroyed. Now the question will be coming in our mind, how can I believe? See, for us, as I told you in the beginning, in this just before, whatever within our experience, that's what we tend to believe. That which is not in our experience, we find very difficult to believe that. So when I say that space is limitless, Atma is sarva, it's all sarva gadaga, it's pervading all places, all, and it's like the space which has no limit. Now how can I believe that? How can I believe there is Atma? I can't see that. You say there is no form. When there is no form, how will you establish it is there? Now the very simple thing is that we all believe there is space. Yes or no? When we can believe space which is limitless, let us also try to believe that Atma is also there. That's the only way, because as I told earlier, everything is not for our experience. There are certain things only for our knowledge. We can understand that, we can know that, but we cannot experience. Atma is something like that. If you want to experience Atma, no, you can, but you can get the knowledge about Atma. So there are certain things which are only for the sake of knowledge. Atma is something like that. So he says, Arjuna, fight the war. Now, the question comes, why should the Lord encourage to fight the war? There's a debate going on this. Can God motivate people to fight war, killing each other? Is it not a foolish thing? Is it not a cruel thing? Can God motivate someone to do such a cruel thing? Fantastic. It's good to have certain questions like this. Only then the clarity is possible. Now let us try to understand this. In the coming verses, once the verse is complete, it's going to complete with Arjuna, so fight. That's how Lord Krishna is going to complete each verse now, the next few verses. So let us get the clarity on this war factor. Here, Arjuna is in the middle of the battlefield. The confusion is there whether to fight the war or not. They have already decided to fight the war and they have come to the battlefield, and suddenly Arjuna got that confusion. Should I go ahead? I will not fight the war. Since Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is teaching Arjuna in the middle of the battlefield where Arjuna is supposed to fight the war, Krishna says, Arjuna, fight the war. Now, why Arjuna should fight the war? One is Swadharma. It's very, very important. We will talk about Swadharma in chapter number 4. We need to understand this. Swadharma, for a Kshatriya, this is Lord Krishna is going to establish in this chapter itself, whether it is dharma to fight the war. A Kshatriya's duty is to protect his people, kingdom. War is the ultimate step that the king has to take. But if the war is for the cause of dharma, or if the war is against adharma, there is nothing wrong. It is the dharma of a king to fight the war, fight against someone who is doing adharma. So here, if you look into the story of Mahabharata, the Duryodhanadis, they snatched the kingdom from Pandavas, they cheated them, they did lot of adharmas to Pandavas. In spite of Pandavas obeying to Duryodhanadis, they still tried to cheat. They want to hold on to the land. So it is an act of adharma. So, as a Kshatriya, it is the duty of Arjuna and his brothers to fight this war. It is not fighting against Duryodhanades, it is a fight against adharma. So that is a Kshatriya dharma, that is called their Swadharma. We also understood that Bhagavad Gita is not only for Arjuna, Bhagavad Gita is for everyone. So what Lord Krishna tries to say here is that by asking Arjuna to fight the war, to do your Swadharma, Lord Krishna is trying to tell everyone, do your duty. What may hindrance come, what may problems you come across, you should not shy away from your Swadharma. That's what Lord Krishna is trying to say through this way of telling Arjuna, you fight the war, because for Arjuna at that battlefield is fighting against adharma, so fight the war. It is your Swadharma, it is your duty. So that's the understanding we should have when Lord Krishna motivates Arjuna or convinces Arjuna to fight the war. So for us, Krishna is motivating us to do our Swadharma, our duty, whatever it is. In spite of hurdles, in spite of problems, do it. Don't worry. That's what he is saying here. Now we'll move to verse number 18. In verse number 18, he is going to establish that Atma is Nitya, Nitya, Satya, Sarvagadaga, Aprameyaha. It is Aprameyaha. So we'll see this. That is, when we say Aprameyaha, Atma is ever the subject, never the object. How do we understand? I am going to give this in a very simple example you can understand. There is something, the photograph, we take photographs, everything is visible in the photograph except one thing. Is it not? What is that one thing that is missing in the photograph? And that photograph is not possible with that one thing. But that one thing is not in the photograph. Yes, it is a camera. It's a camera. The camera takes the photograph, but when you see the photograph, you don't see the camera there. But because you don't see the camera, can you say that camera is not there? That camera is not responsible for the photograph? It is understood. Without that camera, photograph is not possible. The camera is responsible for the photograph, but the camera is never part of the photograph. The camera is never part of the photograph. Yes or no? So Atma is Aprameyaha, means it is ever the subject but never the object. What is subject? An object. Subject becomes object under modifications. Subject becomes an object when modified. But Atma doesn't undergo any modification. Let us take the gold and the jewel, chair and the wood. We saw these examples in the previous class. The gold is there. It is been made into a jewel. You see the jewel. You see the jewel. But where is the gold? The gold is there. The gold as such is there. The gold never undergoes any change. Why it doesn't undergo any change? Even when you destroy the jewel, you still have the gold there. Anything that has undergone change cannot come back to the earlier form. Let us understand this. Our body from childhood till the old age has undergone many changes. Is it possible to get back to the previous stage? From a childhood you move on to boyhood, but suddenly you feel boyhood is horrible, I want to go back to childhood. Is it possible? Many old age people have this you know what do you call it, the desire to go back to the childhood days, because they can enjoy once again everything. Is it possible? That which has undergone modification, the subject has now become an object. It will never become a subject again. But whereas in jewel, the gold is a subject, the jewel is also a subject, because the gold is there. Even if you destroy the jewel, the gold will never get destroyed. So the gold has never become the object. In your vision, it has become a jewel, but for gold, it is only gold. When you melt the jewel, you get back the gold. So similarly, Atma is there within our body. It is there everywhere. Everything undergoes change, but Atma doesn't undergo any change. It is part of everything, but nothing is part of it. If anything becomes part of Atma, Atma has undergone a modification. Again, I told you a simple example in the earlier classes, the movie screen. So many things happens in the movie screen, but after the movie is over, the screen remains as what it is. The screen as a subject remains as a subject, never become the object. There were so many objects on the screen, as you see, but never it become the object. Once all those objects have gone, the movie is over, the screen as a subject remains as a subject for the next movie to be screened. Similarly, Atma remains as Atma for the next avatar to take place. So, in verse number 18, it says Atma is aprameyaha, which means it is ever the subject, never the object. So, he says, Arjuna, whomsoever you see they are, the bodies are objects, but Atma as a subject remains as a subject. You cannot destroy that. That is verse number 18. And in verse number 19, people who think Atma is the killer, that is a karta or being killed, is an ignorant person. I am going to elaborate. So Atma is never a karta nor bhokta. It is not born again. So this is verse number 19, which I will take it up in class in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.